Fox's Bob coming from BBD, from Arunachal Pradesh, what is considered in my view one finger of the palm and five finger policy as far as China is concerned. I'm sitting in Italy, a lovely spot, but you can see the terrain so difficult. I've traversed some roads and you can actually see the kind of difficulty India has to undertake to build logistics up to the Chinese border. Chinese obviously probably are not interested in the valley area, which is Itanagar, etc., etc. But their critical concern continues to be Tawang and especially that region. The reason obviously is the control of Tibet. And they feel that Tibet can critically you need Buddhism to control Tibet. For that, these five fingers become very critical because those all have monasteries that provide the heft to the religion and can cause a lot of turbulence in Tibet. And this obviously the five fingers, Ladakh, you have Sikkim, you have Bhutan. Bhutan they've already done a deal with, or trying to do a deal with, have been trying for so long. But Sikkim they put to bed for a while. They want to get Ladakh and Tawang first. Once they do that, then nothing's stopping them from going up to Sikkim. So what do you have here, right? You have China itself, right? It's not doing that well now. China's energy crisis to help Indian chemical steel players. China sees economic growth stumble. Evergrande misses third round of bond coupon payments. Microsoft, which was used to be one closely aligned with China, also Microsoft was shut down LinkedIn in China. Amid US-China chill, Harvard moves coast to Taiwan. That's got to be a smack on the heads. And for India, this is critical. The seas versus the mountains. It says there is a plan for the maritime front, but the Himalayas are much more vulnerable. On the very day that Delhi and DC sent a signal from the seas, Beijing sent its own signal from the mountains as news broke of forward movements in China's protracted boundary negotiations with Bhutan. In the same week that the India-US maritime partnership got more robust, the India-China stalemate at Ladakh also deepened, with unusually harsh public statements after military-level talks failed to make progress. This indicates that China wants to stay put in the new areas where it has established its presence and is not even bothering with the pretense of being constructive. See, this is the important part. Beijing's belligerence comes in the wake of its new brief incursion both in the middle sector Uttarakhand and eastern sector Tawang over the past months, and polemics against Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu's visit to Arunachal Pradesh. India should use the seas to enhance leverage, but remember, its greatest challenge is in the mountains and it should be ready. And I can see the terrain, it's so difficult, right? And here's the deal, right? Decoding the China-Bhutan border deal. This is written by Manoj Joshi. He says, earlier this year, China expert Robert Barnett and his team revealed that since 2015, the Chinese had been building a network of roads, buildings and military posts in the areas they claimed is in northern Bhutan as well. In short, they were occupying whatever they claimed in Bhutan without as much as buy or leave to the Bhutanese, right? In South Asia, China sees Bhutan, where it does not yet have an embassy, as the last frontier. Having made inroads into India's preeminence in Nepal, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, Beijing would like to challenge New Delhi's special relationship with Bhutan as well. Recent events including Doklam and the revival of its claims in the eastern region can be seen as systematic Chinese pressure to push the Bhutanese to comply with its demands. But recent developments suggest a perception in Bhutan that there are limits to which it can depend on India for security. This is important because we've given up on their helping them at Doklam, right? With New Delhi itself hard-pressed against the LAC, it is unlikely to be of much help to Bhutan. On the other hand, a settled border could have many benefits, including Chinese investments and tourists, and that could be a big disaster. And where we need to do is this: how India is building ties with nations that share Buddhist heritage. What is important is, you don't need to promote Buddhism and Buddhism tourism in India. You need to take ownership of Buddhism, and that is what China is trying to do through Tibet, the Five Fingers, Nepal, right? He says the PM believes that rekindling India's ties with Buddhist countries and building strong relationship with them given our shared values. And he says, as Buddhas, Karam Bhumi, India has several places of significance associated with his life, and most important ones being Gaya, where Buddhas attained Nirvana, Saranath, where he gave his first sermon, and Kushinagar, where he attained Mahaparvarnivana. Over the last 7 years, the PM has created several avenues to build strong ties with countries that share a common Buddhist heritage with India. We are now seeing many of these relationships flourish around a common shared purpose and a set of universal values. Which is what I talk to you folks about. Taking ownership, not promoting. Promotion's bygone. You take ownership, you unsettle China. For them, their weakest point and their biggest fear is Tibet, followed by the Uyghurs. Cheers. So in Bangladesh, still holding our own to a sense, India-Bangladesh ties deeper than any other strategic partnership Sri Sringa. from what's happening in Bangladesh with all the anti-minority, the burning of the temples, etc. It's a kind of a playback. It's like a pushback. It's like a payback for what this particular dispensation has been doing and targeting minorities, especially our home minister, right? But India accepts Russia's invite for talks with Taliban next week. It did so. Inclusive Afghan government on agenda of talks in Russia, India to attend. Khalilzad quits as US Special Envoy to Afghanistan, writes Yashwant Raj, but he is the reason why this whole thing has failed, folks. He was the wrong guy to have gone to, and he was the wrong guy to have stayed with, right? Pakistan, 10 killed in 2 days as supporters of radical group clash with police. Pakistan's got absolutely no joy at all. On the other side, you have Russia, China, hold joint patrols in the Pacific. So this is a pushback for what's happening between Australia, Canada, the United States. They were through the Taiwan Straits too, right? Then you have at Moscow meet, India offered humanitarian aid, says Taliban. Afghan women's volleyball team player killed by Taliban, says report. This was second official engagement between the two sides, right? Afghan Sikhs will have to choose between Islam or leaving, says report. Qureshi, Afghan Taliban vow to not let soil be used by Pakistan Taliban Baloch nationalists. I hope in hell. India Taliban delegations meet in Russia. Okay, after meeting Indian officials in Russia, Taliban agrees to aid from India. Yeah, beggars can't be choosers, and Taliban are beggars. And India is the only one out there that can give them food aid, right? Taliban call for international aid at Russia-hosted talks, begging, and then it says, India, we will not take aid from. I don't know, a bunch of mullahs, man. Pakistan foreign minister makes first visit to Kabul after Taliban take over. Why they won't take it is because they're relying on another beggar country, Pakistan. Warning from IS, Shia Muslims will be targeted everywhere. This is dangerous. Shias everywhere, right? Pakistan Army chief visits ISI headquarters amid tiff over appointment of spy chief, so their problems are not going away, right? Afghanistan in food crisis. India plans to send 50,000 metric tons of wheat. But logistic was a challenge because Pakistan will not let our trucks through. Pakistan, who doesn't have enough wheat to feed its own people, will not let us through. What cussedness. And this is what the Afghan and the Afghan Taliban should see. US trying to strike deal with Pakistan to use airspace for Afghanistan ops. That's going nowhere, right? But we are really having a blowback currently. J&K police look to move non-locals to safer area. Now this is shameful to playing out in the global media, right? India asked UK to help curb misuse of Afghan soil. United Kingdom, like I said, dubious reputation in Afghanistan, has been in cahoots with the Taliban for the longest of time. A given probably at times against the United States. Go figure that. Cheers. So the other big issue in the Middle East is what's happening in Turkey, right? Turkey first has been put on the FATF, and subsequently what happened is Erdogan orders removal of 10 ambassadors. He says the envoys, including the US, French and German representatives in Ankara, issued a statement earlier this week calling for a resolution to the case of Osman Kavala, a businessman. He says, describing the statement as an imprudence, Erdogan said he had ordered the ambassadors be declared undesirable. The diplomats, who include the ambassadors of Netherlands, Canada, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Norway and New Zealand. So he's basically throwing all the Western nations out. He's in trouble, I think. So technically the Middle East and Europe is in kind of a flux, right? Middle East, Afghanistan is kind of unsettled. Then you have, drought compounds crisis in Afghanistan, US to send humanitarian aid. Iraq is trying to bring together rivals in Baghdad. This is a funny one. Capital of Caliphate is now Syria's boomtown. And why is that? It was under the protection of the United States. The US has walked off from everywhere. Russia is now no longer concerned. Turkey seems to have lost its energy after America left. So this is what's happening, right? But for Europe, unsettling. Russia tightens energy market. And not only for Russia, for Europe, but also for the rest of the world. It's really difficult times, right? But what do we have for Europe? Reading the EU fine print written by Christophe Jaffarlot, India does not figure prominently in its Indo-Pacific strategy. The Chinese challenge might change that. I think it's about time. Last month, the making of AUKUS eclipsed another Indo-Pacific related announcement, the release of the EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. This is rather unfair because this document is very rich and needs to be analyzed in the context of the rapprochement between EU and India, which culminated in the June EU-India summit, a turning point according to some analysts. Then he says, by and large, the Indo-Pacific strategy of the EU remains driven by economic considerations, and India, whose main asset is geopolitical and even geostrategic, does not figure prominently in it. What the French see as India's main asset, its strategic dimension, is not central in the EU document because this is driven by Germany, which may change after Merkel going. Thus, the EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific is more in tune with the German vision of the Indo-Pacific than with the French one. For Berlin, trade, economic cooperation, human rights, and engaging China at the same time and the ASEAN matter more than security, and India, the two pillars of the French Indo-Pacific strategy. Great Britain's Indo-Pacific strategy being similar to France's, but China's attitude may force Germany and the EU to change their mind in the near future, and I think that's about to happen, or is happening rather. What do we have? C. Rajamohan right. European booster shot. Europe's promise to enhance India's quest for a multipolar world rebalanced Indo-Pacific. He says, last week in-person summit in Delhi was with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. This was apt since Europe looms so large in India's diplomatic agenda today, and smaller European states draw unprecedented political attention from Delhi. If the Danish encounter highlights India's immense possibilities with the smaller European countries, the prospects for larger strategic cooperation with Europe's collective have opened up with the articulation of a comprehensive Indo-Pacific strategy by the European Union last month, even though India wasn't prominent. The EU's Indo-Pacific strategy, hardly noticed in Delhi, is likely to have a much greater impact on the region more immediately and on a wider range of areas than military security. They range from trade and investment to green partnerships, the construction of quality infrastructure to digital partnerships, and from strengthening ocean governance to promoting research and innovation, defense and security. For the first time since the Europe colonial powers retreated from Asia amid surge of nationalist movements in the middle of 20th century, Europe is returning as a geopolitical actor to Asia and its waters, the Indo-Pacific, if you will. Okay. The EU outlined a strategy for India in 2018 to focus on 4 themes: sustainable economic modernization, promotion of rules-based order, foreign policy coordination, and security cooperation. At the summit in Portugal in May this year, the EU and India agreed to resume free trade talks and develop a new connectivity partnership that would widen options for the world beyond the Belt and Road Initiative. Above all, there is recognition in both Delhi and Brussels that the India-US strategic partnership is crucial for the rebalancing of the international system amidst the current global flux. Delhi knows that Europe could significantly boost India's capacity to influence future outcomes in the Indo-Pacific. It would also be a valuable complement to India's Quad coalition with Australia, Japan and the United States. And that, folks, is the truth. The European Union is being driven by Merkel's Germany, which was more related to economics. Things are changing. France is going to get its view across, as is Portugal, as is Spain. There, India could play a huge role. Cheers. So, a quick readout of the international news. Times of India. Amid India face-off, China adopts law to protect its borders. This is kind of a strange kind of a thing, right? Why would it need to create law to protect its own borders, right? That's interesting. See what kind of impact that has. LAC hot, new battalions for ITBP likely. Interestingly, I'm sitting at the ITBP guest house in Itanagar. Then what do you have? PM to visit Italy this week for G20 meet, then head to United Kingdom. Interesting. Then you have Bangladesh plans speedy trials in temple violence case. PLA shall carry out border drills and combat invasion, says new China law. Then it says Pakistan PM's aide accuses US of sabotaging the CPEC, and Taliban killed 3 IS kidnappers in 3-hour gun battle. So that's not going away, right, folks? That's the important part to note. And what did we have in a small piece in Economic Times? That had something to do with basically suggesting to us PM likely to seek united approach on Afghanistan crisis and COVID-19. And WHO advisory group to meet tomorrow to decide on Covaxin. Nothing came of that yet. PLI tweaks to push textile exports to 65 billion. Target is realistic, though we are talking about 100 billion, right? Do we have anything else that has international? China warns of further spread in latest COVID-19 flare-up. China adopts new border law, and then you have Evergrande resumes work on more than 10 property projects. I'm not sure where that's going away, right? Whether that's going anywhere at all. And that's all, folks. I'm not sure whether you can hear all this air activity over the skies of Arunachal Pradesh. I am hearing a lot of it since yesterday. So a lot of action going on here. What do we have here? US is working against CPEC Pak PM aid. US didn't put enough pressure on Ghazni, laments Khalilzad. Khalilzad was a culprit in all this. America's message to North Korea: stop missile tests, return to talks. Wuhan halts marathon as China cases surge, right? Tata Sons plans to invest $2 billion in super app. This is going to be a global issue. Then you have what is happening in nuclear China, says Kunal Singh. He says, why have they speeded it up? Instead, China's greed, for example, to exercise complete sovereignty over Taiwan is contributing to the risk of conflict. Rather than being worried about structural factors and misperceptions that can start war, China might simply be preparing for a conflict. It knows it will start. Therefore, even if China has non-aggressive motivations to invest in its nuclear forces, the timing of these developments suggests that Beijing's aggressive intentions might still be a factor, and that's true for India and true for Taiwan and the United States. Where Kunal gets it wrong, it's obviously a case of declining and ascending power. But he calls the US declining China is sending. On the other hand, I think why China is getting aggressive is because I think it's hit a wall. It knows it can't go up any further. It's on the way down. United States cannot be a declining power. And the guy sitting in MIT is talking like that. I don't know, folks. Cheers.